Okay, so for the last event of the day, we've got George Castro here from Nautical, and he's going to talk to us about collaboration between Ubuntu and Debian. So everybody, welcome George Castro.
Thanks, everyone. Just a little bit about myself. This is my third DEFCON, and I'm really glad and honored to be able to speak in front of you today. I'm going to talk about something that's really near and dear to my heart. If you don't know who I am, I work on the community team, specifically on external developer relations, which is our Upstream, so our GNOMEs, our KDEs, and of course Debian being our most important upstream. It's important to me that the sort of collaboration between our two projects is in a healthy state. So, this is going to auto-start my slides, is it? So, the thing I want to talk about today, since history now between our two projects is getting a little bit long, I'm not really going to talk about the past, unless you want to bring the discussion at the end. But there's a lot of great stuff that our Debian and Ubuntu are doing today. So I would like to really concentrate on those. I want to communicate to you why these things are exciting to me, and also things that we want to work on in the future. And of course, to foster a two-way relationship based on mutual respect and collaboration. So what exactly do I mean by collaboration? To me, I think the main point is working together on a relationship. There's a lot of yes. There's a lot of things where people use the word collaboration and they don't really explain what exactly they're talking about. For me, that's having Ubuntu members and developers participating in Debian, participating in DEFCON. So you can talk about issues that affect projects, how we work better together. And collaboration also needs to be, I have a bullet here from, but basically what I want to communicate here is that the projects are so large. There's almost 1,000 Debian developers. So it takes to recognize that sometimes you're not going to get every patch, you're going to get every issue solved. Right? I think at some point someone's going to say, George, guess what? You get to see home with DEFCON because all the issues are fixed, right? But Zach mentioned this about it's not getting, you want to get the consensus, not shoot for an attainable goal. And it's to go right. A lot of the work we do wouldn't be possible if we had people willing to cooperate with us. So the first thing I want to talk about, which I'm really excited about, is the derivatives front desk. So this was a project started by Debian to basically be a one-stop shop for derivatives such as Ubuntu to learn best practices on how to work with Debian. My personal interest in this is patches and bugs. So in a few slides, I'm going to talk about some of the patches that we found laying around and bugs that we found laying around. Shouldn't be laying around. But the derivatives desk gives us a good place where we can start in that process. And it's also a really great place for new contributors to get started. So basically, I want to be Debian and Ubuntu to be example to others. And be good at that, right? So Debian has other derivatives, right? Someone can say, well, I started a Debian derivative, and I think it would be a great idea if I did this, right? We can say, well, I remember when George had this really great idea, and it was total fail. So learn from my bad example. And we're seeing great participation from Ubuntu and Debian. I think there's a few Nexenta folks in there. I don't know if any of them are in there. So, but this is really great because it's new enough that we can start to get other derivatives here. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the work that goes on in here. And of course, this is on #Debian-Ubuntu on TC. So this is my favorite thing when people ask me, how are things going with Debian? With you guys? Are you guys still like hate each other? And I was like, what? So the relationship is complicated because when you have over 1,000 people in one project, and I'm not sure exactly how many people we count as Ubuntu developers these days. We have many conversations. There's really no simple answer. People automatically assume that's bad, right? So when they say, how are things going with Debian? It's complicated. They automatically assume that, it's like their experience with, a boyfriend or girlfriend where it's complicated. But it is many things. So there's pockets of good things. There's pockets of bad things. And I think it's a waste of time to try to reach this nirvana state of, things are great. No matter what we do, things are always going to be complicated. So we're going to have pockets of good things, and I think the key there is to sustain the ideas and things we learn from those good things. And there's pockets of bad things which we can do to learn and move forward. And of course, help other derivatives not fall into the same mistakes. But this active work, you can't just kind of assume that, everybody's going to try to do this thing. It takes literally everyone who is involved in the project to try to make sure that that doesn't stagnate and end up being bad. Myth busting. So this is my second favorite thing is I always tell people, hey, so what are you doing next month? You want to have a beer? I can't, I'm going to DEFCON. And they give me this look like, Ubuntu people go to DEFCON, or they kill you and like display your brief, or whatever. And as Zach mentioned this morning, my very first DEFCON 3 years ago, I was a little intimidated. I was like, well, as Zach pointed out this morning, these reputation that some projects would have. And I was really concerned. I was like really scared. I was like, if I wear my Debian t-shirt that I bought 5 years ago, will somebody think I'm trying to be a poser or what? So people ask me this all the time. They're like, so what's it like to go to DEFCON? And I was like, man, some of these people are the best drinking buddies I've had in a long time. So I think, and Ubuntu can have a reputation as well. But I think one of the things that we're all starting to become better at is forget the myth and just work on fixing the problem, right? Within the people I've talked to that are started in Ubuntu and come to Debian, it doesn't match the myth to me. So I was just at a sprint and I had a person from our kernel team. He came up and he was like, man, I'm getting in the Debian maintainer process. He was like really excited. So I love to see things like that. And he was like, I had this preconception in my head that, it was going to be bad and people were going to like yell at me and all this kind of stuff. But, I found a sponsor who's willing to help me and I'm getting a lot of stuff done. I think that also too, so a lot of this is the internet's fault because they have this view on our projects. So it might be this myth that there are always bad things going on. So when Zach did his little survey, because he was attending a UDS, and he said, I want to know what your relationships are with Ubuntu developers, et cetera. And there were a few teams in there that I hadn't heard of, because people always concentrate when people make mistakes, right? And usually when people or teams make mistakes, you hear about it a lot, but you never hear about some of the teams that are out there that are doing it the right way, right? Maybe saying, you know what, I either carry this patch or I can fix it in Debian. But a lot of people are just out there with their heads down, skating hard, trying to do the right thing. So something I'm personally trying to do is, instead of getting involved in these conversations where people are flaming the people who make mistakes, I'm also trying to encourage people who are at least trying to do the right thing to continue. And we're also proud of our contributions. The gentleman, I don't know if he stepped out earlier, who said, I started with Ubuntu, and now I'm involved in Debian. We're really proud when we see the new list of DD and I recognize the name, or it's somebody who started. Just a quick survey. How many of you started in Ubuntu and are now contributing to Debian? Well, okay, there's a few. Good. So we also have Motu focus on working with Debian. This is pretty interesting because usually in the Motu channel.
What's Motu?
Oh, I'm sorry. The Masters of the Universe. So we divide our archive into many, which is basically what we ship on CD. There's Universe, which is the rest of Debian, and then all the illegal bits.
So more or less the same.
So one of the great things that we're seeing lately is someone joins the channel and they say, hey, I wrote an application and I want to get this in Ubuntu. And usually one of the very first responses is, have you talked to someone at Debian? And they either say, what's Debian? Or they haven't. So usually that's when we have contributors step up and say, look, if you want to do this the right way, you need to talk to Debian first. So I'm really happy from that. I think a lot of people think that it's a top-down kind of idea, but to see that down at the contributor level with Motus, many of whom are now getting more and more familiar with Debian processes, is encouraging to me. We're also making active work on pushing patches upstream and to Debian. So this is actually going to be a little bit embarrassing, but I'll show you later. I'm doing a lot of work on trying to get patches to be visible, both to upstreams and to Debian. And I got the Launchpad guys to basically write me a little view that showed all patches sitting in Launchpad that have not gone anywhere. And unfortunately, the number was pretty high. It was like 2,200. And this was really disconcerting to me because we talk about how we want to lower the barrier, right? And it's like, if you want to contribute, send a patch and patch it somewhere. And then, someone goes sees the talk from Mad Dog Hall, and they get pumped up, get back, they do a little Python patch it to Launchpad or the BTS, and then it goes into this black hole where the Higgs boson is. So I created this view. I asked them to create a view that showed me these patches, and now we're actively working on getting the number down to 0. And it's not getting 0. What we can do is fix the processes of what happens when a contributor or a new contributor contributes a patch. I'll do that a little bit. We're also seeing greater participation by DDs and DMs. In case you haven't heard, if you're a Debian person, you always have an open invite to come crash the Ubuntu Developer Summit. We like to have the points of views of the Debian developers in UDS. So usually on the Thursday, I always run a session called the Debian Health Check, where a lot of people coming in, DDs, people who are Ubuntu developers who are keen on working with Debian. We basically go around the room. It gets a little heated. But you have to have those discussions if you're going to fix problems, right? And we also discuss about things that we are doing right and how we can continue to do that. So upstream relationships is also something I'm very passionate about, particularly because it's opportunities to get workflow right off the bat. So if you have an upstream that shows up and says, hey, I'm interested in getting into Ubuntu because we're server-based upstream and LTS is important to us. That, to me, is the critical point where we educate that upstream on how the relationship with Debian and Ubuntu works. Like, for example, do you know if you talk to your DD and you have a relationship with him and or your Ubuntu developer, that we can minimize deltas between the two releases. Upstreams want to do the right thing. I've never met an upstream who was like, oh no, Debian, I don't want to be in that. Who says that, right? They want to get their stuff to use it. Okay. Right. Generally speaking, the upstreams that care okay, let me rephrase it. The upstreams I've talked about that really want to be successful. Oh boy, I knew I'd walk in it at some point. But generally speaking, they don't know the process, right? I work on this document that it's wiki.ubuntu.com/upstreams. And there's basically two sections. The quick and dirty way, which involves setting up their own app repositories and PPA stuff. And then there's the long-term, smart way, right way to do things, which means talking to someone at Debian. And we have a lot of contributors who, when an upstream comes up, they say, I have no idea how to talk to Debian. We have people that step up and help start that process. So, and at the end of the day, it's convincing upstreams that it's work. We have this old school mentality that there's upstream, and then there's a line, and there's the distribution, right? The software now is getting so sophisticated that you really we can't afford to have these islands of, well, I'm an upstream and stuff, that's your problem. We'll have the distro, this book is your problem, right? We need to start meshing those together because it's becoming more like an operating system than just a distribution at that point. So how am I trying to measure success? I had this awesome idea, which ended up being totally horrible, where I was like, if I figure out whatever the magic number is of our contribution to Debian, then I can measure that, and then I can just measure it grows or doesn't go down. So, thanks to Lucas Nussbaum, who's actually like way smarter than me. We started measuring things like origin to here are bugs that we forwarded that would be interesting to Debian developers. We started asking people to tag their patches that they've sent upstream there, and I thought, oh, awesome, 1386. That sounds like a magic-ish number, but it's a lot more complicated than that, especially when a lot of the Ubuntu developers who are also in Debian say, why would I go through all this mess when I just in Debian? And I was like, well, that's no fair, I can't measure it. How am I supposed to come up with my magic number? Right, and we have Ubuntu user tags where we keep track of all the patches based on releases that we do. So for halfway through a cycle, we say, hey, wait a minute, the numbers are down, right? So please keep using your tags. Started to measure who's doing the amount of work, right? Because I wanted to see a nice mix of people here, not just canonical employees who, you know, or whatever. But again, some people weren't using these tags, so it became very difficult for me to try to figure out why I'm even trying to have this magic number when people would just be doing the work directly in Debian. We have a tool called Harvest, which looks at upstream bug trackers and their patches, and we can do this for multiple distros, so we can see if Fedora is carrying a patch to evolution. These are bugs that are fixed upstream, right? So you know, if I can gather all that, I can come up and help add to that magic number that will solve all those problems. Right? On the right here, on the QA page, we have links to the bugs that are reported in Ubuntu for that package, and we're also showing you the patches, right? Looking good. On our QA pages for Ubuntu, we have the same thing, doing everything to lower the enter to show patches. This is the view Launchpad I was talking about, where you can take a URL for any person or any project. You add tag a plus patches at the end. We show you all your patches, right? Amazing. If I could just get Upstreams to look at all these pages and we index every distribution, it'll be great. It'll be great. This is how we're doing with Operation Clean Sweep, right? So we found these 2,200 bugs. We've gone through 378 of them. 90 need work. 164 were able to submit directly upstream. 51 we were able to submit to Debian. These are the ones accepted upstream and accepted by Debian, and the rejected ones, because I wanted to get a feel for how well are they doing. Are these patches that are sitting in Launchpad worth the effort, or are they all crap? So it sounds really great, right? However, some things just aren't easily measurable. There's no way to, there is no magic number. And it took me some time to realize this, because I put all this work into thinking that I would solve the world's problems. Ends up, I'm not that smart. So then Colin, the highlights here are mine here. Blogged this recently where he basically said, maintaining Grub 2, and someone basically just emailed me and told me, hey, it'd be really great since you're the co-maintainer to take care of these issues. This is something I can never measure with a magic number. This is something that involves the personal relationships that we have and that we maintain in free software. So I've come to the conclusion that these numbers and all these great tools that we're making are very useful, but we should use these as guides, not crutches, right? It's like, Steve, you're in big trouble. Your numbers are 20% down from last cycle. But you know, what does that mean? And we also know that there's thousands of people out there doing things that might be measurable. There's people out there who might be introducing people to each other, right? How do you measure that? You really don't. Does the person who stands at a Debian booth for 6 hours straight and falls over, how do you measure that? You don't, compared to, you know, a developer contribution. So these numbers and stuff is sort of like a Sisyphean task. You guys know the myth story where there's a guy, he got punished by a god, and his job was to take a rock all the way up this hill, and like at the very top it would always slip and fall back down. He got all depressed, so he would have to do that for eternity. So these tools and things like that are really good to measure, but it doesn't replace the kind of discussions that we'll be having at events like this, and you at FOSDEM, and you know, open shows over. And at the end of the day, the work on the culture is a better payoff, right? I don't think that sitting there staring at trying to get this magic number is as important as to say, hello, welcome. Oh, you're a new Ubuntu computer? Let me tell you about the importance about what it's like to work with Debian and why that is. So I think in the long run, it's better to just work on the investment of the people. Sometimes people ask me why Ubuntu doesn't really have like one person who's the Debian relationship person. And that's because it's every developer's responsibility in the project to be that person. So in the future, there's some interesting challenges here, which I think are pretty good. So as Mark showed earlier with an application, we're starting, Canonical is starting to invest time in its project. Excuse me. So how do we work through this workflow, right? I'm sure some of you saw an netbook interface and wow, that'd be really in Debian. But what kind of work does that entail? In a lot of ways, there's things that we learned here as far as what it takes to work with upstreams. Because believe it or not, Ayatana, the netbook, the Unity guys, I'm sorry, are kind of their own upstream as well. And me being on the platform team, we have the same issues. So there are times that we have to distro patch something and then ensure that the patch gets upstream to someone working at my same company. There's a lot of things that you can learn there as far as workflow goes. And Debian is the hub for derivatives. Tell me if you share this nightmare. Probably not. So you have Debian, let's say, as a hub, and you have different derivatives based on Debian, right? And we're actively working to ensure that this flow is working. So I have this, okay, this is a pretty big nightmare, is that there's someone at this derivative over here who's fixed a bug, and then maybe they don't know how to get it back. So they sit on it. And then you have another derivative who might face the same bug. And are they looking? Is there a process where they can look at the other derivatives that are facing the same problems, right? Because at the end of the day, what we don't want is every derivative fixing the same bug over and over again. It's a waste of effort. So I think what excites me about the derivatives front desk is it's an opportunity for us to figure out patch and bug workflow problems so that we can make it efficient for people to mix stuff back and forth, right? So you have the hub and things going like this and things. And it's also an opportunity for us to reinforce the culture of upstreaming things to Debian so that we're not carrying the big deltas. These are some people who've done some really interesting work. Without Lucas basically feeding me every time there's an issue in Debian, I wouldn't be here. So I'd like to thank these people with one foot in each project. And there's also a lot of people here who I might not know about or things like that. And that goes back to we should be reinforcing the people who are doing the right thing. So there's too many people to list, but we can always never have enough help with people doing this because both are dynamic projects, they're very large. Well, 29,000 packages you said this morning? Right, you're not going to catch them all. They're not like Pokemon. So it takes everyone's effort to be able to catch this stuff. So here's some Ubuntu developers who are here. You might recognize some of these names. I just want to make sure that they're up here. If you're a DD and you're looking to talk to someone, like I said, I'm one of the people who's at the end of the Debian@ubuntu.com address, and I'm always looking for feedback, good or bad, so I can help get the word out on the stuff people are doing. So I purposely kind of rushed through these slides, and I didn't have any slides because I didn't want to bore you. I'm kind of boring. But I wanted to do is open it up for discussion on those of you who have had experience working with Ubuntu, good, bad, and just basically leave it open-ended for us to talk about where we go from here. Anybody have any comments?
Thank you.
First goal accomplished, not getting killed. All right.
Wow, that's still funny.
Yeah, so in fact, I just wanted to thank you because I went to UDS to present Debian views on how collaboration between Ubuntu is, and I asked Jorge to do the same, and he was actually scared of getting killed here. And I'm actually very, very happy that you in the end said to come, and I think this is the way forward, not for the interest of Debian, not for the interest of Ubuntu, but in general for this shop.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there seems So we had our Debian health check at UDS, and then I was like, since DevConf is in the middle, what a great time for us to sit down again and look at our progress from the issues that you assigned, because he figured out how to assign me work items, which doesn't really help me out a lot, but yeah, the DevConfs and other conferences where we have strong Debian participation in Ubuntu FOSDEM, for example. There's no reason people can't get together and on things and do a little pulse check. Sheesh, my favorite hat.
Alright, I guess I'll stand for that video. So, what were some of those work items, and what is progress? I know that you talked about a bunch of things. So you talked about some of the metrics, but also had enough. I guess, can you tell, if you don't want to answer that, also I offer this other question, what's a recent happy story that's longer than... You can think about that too.
Let me on that one. Let me address the first one. I think one of the concerns Zach told me right away is that sometimes I think people lose the fact that we're proud to be built on Debian, and that people say sister projects and stuff, but I don't really know the analogy there. But like I said, it could be very difficult when you have a new user that bought their Ubuntu machine somewhere and they have no concept of Debian. But I don't consider that a bad thing, mostly because I think the people that I would like to get to Debian the most are probably the more advanced users, the whole built by experts deal. So if someone starts off using Ubuntu and has no clue what Debian is, and then finds the link that we put in the browser, or source code and figures out where it is, and ends up at least looking at Debian and looking at how to contribute, then I think that's a win. That's a user education thing, I think.
So I guess I asked about what the goals were and how the progress is, and it sounds like there's feedback. It sounds like he said one of the goals is helping people find Debian, and one of the things you've done recently is this link in the web browser.
No, it's actually been there the whole time. We just bury it. Actually, we don't bury the Debian one specifically. Our bookmarks they're kind of in a nested, hidden thing. One of the things, the page I'm really proud of is the Debian Ubuntu story on Ubuntu.com. That every time we refresh the website, someone drops it, and a whole bunch of file bugs and want to kill me, and then I have to get it back. But yeah, I mean, we've had that there. It's a tough thing to communicate, I think. I think what's important is as long as users are people like us who are aware of where the contributions come from, then we need to do a better job recognizing people for that. So one of the tasks was, maybe perhaps we should be doing more about some of the things that we get from Debian that are useful. I don't think, standing on top of a hill saying, we're built on Debian or whatever. I think as long as users understand how things flow is a good way to do it. A lot of it is figuring out how to do that subtly without spamming or,
Hi. I know of some cases of people forking packages out of, not using the Debian package or contributing to it, but just forking the package. And I've seen that both in Universe and by Motu, I think, and by some core supported packages. I was wondering if there are some criteria by which you can do a fork or avoid a fork. I mean, I've even contacted Debian at Ubuntu.com, but with no success.
Right. Before I ask someone way smarter than me to answer this question, here's a good anecdotal story. This has two birds with one stone. We had a relationship with an Upstream who wasn't very happy with their packaging in Debian, but he had a personal relationship with someone in Ubuntu, so they were just going to change it. It was an excellent opportunity for the Ubuntu developer to say, hey, I already have a personal relationship with that Upstream, and really this is kind of the way we're moving, and maybe we should throw that away and kind of redo it from scratch. And they did that. Do you have any comments as far as forking packaging? goes? Or? Oh,
I'll field that one.
yes.
You have been noticed, but
So in answering this, I'm going to refer back to one of your earlier comments about how is the relationship between Debian and Ubuntu. It's complicated. Just as Debian is not this monolithic hive mind where everybody's on the same page about what we should do with packages or how we should interact with Ubuntu, and it's a complicated relationship. The reality is that on the Ubuntu side as well, you know, it is a community project with a number of developers who each have different opinions, and it comes down to personal relationships and trying to hook in, and that's something that we try to do on the Ubuntu side to try to avoid forks wherever possible. But you have a disparate group of developers on the Ubuntu side, and sometimes people fork for all the usual reasons that forks happen. And above all, I would hope that not get in the way of the overall health of the Ubuntu Debian relationship.
Zach made a point in his Zach made a point in his plenary earlier that I'd like to refer back to. The answer to that question is really the same as does any Debian developer decide to apply patches to a package rather than getting their patches upstream? And again, the answer is it's complicated. Sometimes it doesn't make sense upstream for one reason or another. Sometimes upstream is just kind of slow right now. Sometimes the Debian developer just kind of sucks. The answer is much the same when you go one step down the downstream. It's a lot easier to look into specific things if there are individual cases you're concerned about, and it's kind of a lot easier to have the discussion about those specific cases because it's complicated.
Just to keep on this thing about forking, I was wondering if you could identify a few differences in policy or strategic differences between the Ubuntu project and the Debian project that generate some of the issues over which one consider, for instance, forking the packaging. You know, places where, because policy is one issue where you might not be able to reconcile.
I'm an answer to this, but before he starts, I think for a lot of packages, particularly what we ship on CD GNOME type packages, we usually package direct from upstream. And I'm going to actually answer your question.
So I'd say there's two primary causes that require significant changes to Debian, which are unavoidable and undesirable, are number one, that Ubuntu is split into a main and universe, so that we try to keep them recommended complete, and that means we have to change the dependencies and recommendations of many packages to stay within that. The other is that we have certain packages such as Firefox that are kept with a different name, and we need to again change those to accommodate that.
Sorry, me again. As I understood the original question, we were actually talking about packages that have forked, distinct from packages that have been branched and have changes in the Ubuntu package but still share the overall packaging. Is that, I mean, there are separate issues there. We're always going to carry some patches, but is that actually your concern, or is?
I was actually referring to both. One of them was one package that was branched, but then abandoned, and basically I never learned about it. So Ubuntu shipped an obsolete old version with security vulnerabilities in universe. So after several mails, in the end, I contacted the security team of Ubuntu to say, guys, please, there's no reason to do that. And the other one was about a non-universe package, main package, I think, that was created from scratch, basically. So,
Which one?
KVM. And ship empty binaries for a while.
So, my experience, I mean, I used to be far more critical about the Ubuntu Debian relationship a few years ago. But my experience has been that it has improved quite a bit in the last couple of years. And I still have one little minor concern, and that is about patches. The last time that I got patches from somebody who was in Motu, the patch was one giant monolithic patch that included changes that had been cherry-picked from my version. And it was a patch against the last time, I guess, for Ubuntu Sync or something like that. And it was very hard for me to actually apply it because it contained my patches, things had moved on. Is there a process in Ubuntu for creating, say, a upstream branch and rebasing patches to upstream branches, which is kind of what I tend to do with my upstreams?
I can make a stab at replying to that. The number one, if you get something like that, then just push back. There's no reason that the burden of trying to unpick that sort of thing should be placed on you, and it's almost certainly somebody who just doesn't quite know what they're doing yet. And it's far better to educate them than to kind of accommodate. Secondly, revision control practices vary widely, as I'm sure you know, just in Ubuntu, just as they do in Debian. A number of people, sorry, I got back to the camera, I just realised. A number of people do create branches or use quill patches in 3.0 formats, etc. There are probably not as many practices as there are approaches, but there are a number of people have different approaches, and in some cases it just depends on how deeply involved we are with the package. If it's kind of drive by, then it'll be a bit less organized than if we're doing something more organized, just as Debian. In your case, the result was probably the cause was probably using. We have a submit to Debian script, which takes the patch and kind of puts in a bug report. You're supposed to edit it. Yeah, you can see how it goes from there, but it's kind of trying to encourage people to at least get back on how it does. If they're not doing it, then push back, because we'd appreciate it just as much as you would.
So I'm going to go quickly for feedback here. I'm a little bit concerned about some of the sort of default proprietary actions of Canonical, for example, Launchpad. Apparently there was a great deal of work to get that open sourced. I'm a little bit concerned about the cloud software that is currently being developed. For example, even some of the RV7 builds that are going on. Not a great deal of clarity in some of Canonical's practices with building and software like that. Could you address that a bit?
Yeah, so I'm not on the Ubuntu team, so I can't really comment intelligently on what our plans are for the server-side software for Ubuntu 1. Currently it is here. As far as the ARM builds, is there... Oh,
There's Loic.
Oh, Loic is right here. This is the guy to talk to.
Hey, so I'm not quite sure I understand fully. I'm not sure I quite understand the problem you're having with the ARM cells, but basically we're doing builds in a very similar way than Debian with a different optimization level. So instead
why is it done in Debian though?
Why isn't it done in Debian? Because Debian cares for older machines, like, I don't know, OpenMoko phones or NAS devices or things like that, while the Ubuntu port was specifically created to target netbooks. Okay. So like more high-end ARM devices which were ARM v7. And so if you build for ARM v4 v5, you kind of lack instructions which make it go much faster. Actually, there is a new Debian port on its way. Part of official or anything, but there is research going on in a Debian port for hard float AVI. And because hard float already puts a high requirement on machines where it can run, it would impact it at V6 or V7, and so it would probably run quite faster than AMI or soft float for which we have right now.
Any other comments?
Maybe here.
Okay. So Matt first, I guess.
So I noticed that a lot of the questions about branching packages and so forth and differences between objects were, a lot of these questions were phrased in terms of what is the policy or what is the process around this, what's the overarching standard that governs this. But as Steve pointed out, these are two complicated projects made up of lots of different people, different behavior, different patterns, and we won't always have an ideal for how things should work that we can say this is what the policy is. But if it helps, the official policy is don't do anything foolish. And if you notice anyone not adhering to this official policy, the right thing to do is to talk to them about it. And if you want help working with it, if there's the Ubuntu.com address, #Ubuntu on OFTC, there's front desk, there are lots of places that you can go to get help working those things out.
And please feel free to use the address. I mean, don't think that I'm going to tattletale on you at Debian and Ubuntu.com and then we'll use people and it'll be bad. The whole point of having the address is to give DDs an avenue where they can bring things up without having to resort to flaming people on blogs and stuff like that. So this is very interesting. I just wanted to show you this. Oh, actually, you had it. Sorry.
Right. I never went to Ubuntu from Ubuntu. Oh, sorry. But I like one feature, and this separation between main and universe. It caused those nice transitions when universe was buried in bugs because transitions weren't synchronized. Not like in Debian, trying to get ready. Right, so I wonder if such feature will prevail in future transitions, so we could use Ubuntu as a testbed for.
Can you rephrase?
Let's say POSIX compliant shells, right? Main part of Ubuntu was properly transitioned to be Dash compatible, but then Universe wasn't, and it just transitioned because it was the main goal of main. And same with Python and other stories, but I it as a feature, of course, for us for Debian because it provides a good testbed. I wonder how is it working in Ubuntu and main and universe.
So I think that's one of the things. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I can feed that if you like, but
sure.
Go ahead.
Your answer will probably be a lot smarter.
So, as I understand it, you're asking about the sort of relative efficiency of making wide-ranging changes, sort of making broad rather than deep changes to packages. Is that?
Critical transitions from one package version to another, which is critical for main, but also for universe and multiverse, which is not supported by Canonical, but supported by community. So what is interaction between Canonical and Ubuntu community in terms of transitions?
So we've been looking at, we've actually been looking at flattening out the main and universe separation anyway. It was good when it was simple in 2004 when we started Ubuntu. It's a bit more complicated now that we have all these different derivatives of Ubuntu that are maintained in our archive and doing all kinds of things. But the guys who maintain, the people who maintain Universe and Multiverse have generally been very organized about doing transitions in a timely fashion. There are some things that slip through, of course, but for the most part, they keep very much on top of library transitions that need to happen and that kind of thing. And it's quite aggressive sometimes. The main difference, I think, between Ubuntu and Debian there is that people are, in Ubuntu, people are officially entitled to make broad changes across a wide swathe of packages. The trade-off, of course, is that we have fewer experts in individual packages. So there are strengths on either side. Stefano's initiative to try to get NMUs widely accepted for RC bugs, I'd hope that things like transitions would be considered there, other kinds of broad changes will hopefully make Debian a little bit more agile in that respect. But you know, it's a trade-off between deep efficiency and broad efficiency. Does that make sense, or is it all waffling?
So you specialize in deep or broad and flat?
In the somewhere there. Thank you, sir.
Any other comments? So this guy came up to me about an hour before my talk, which is why this isn't in a slide. Mehdi, did I pronounce that right? Yeah. So he was like, hey, I don't really like how patches.ubuntu.com is showing me the patches, so I'm working on this. And I thought it would be useful to show here, but it shows a given package, that's that VoIP phone thing. The change log, the links to the PTS, and the diff from Ubuntu. But what he does here, which I think is cool, is you can do it per file here, or if you can click the download, it'll just send you to that file. So I thought that was very interesting. It's really good, I think, that people are thinking about how to make these tools more efficient. So, and you've all seen the ultimate Debian database, right? Which is like really useful when I'm trying to find the magic number.
Say the URL.
I'm sorry, this is ubuntu-diff.debian.net. But this is the /beta, which I don't know if you want people going there yet. But, oh. Sorry. Patches accepted, sure. So, any other comments or questions? I feel 5 minutes too early. Yes, sir.
So I don't have masses of experience interacting with Ubuntu. I had some really great experiences, and sometimes when things didn't work out, and no amount of patch tracking would fix the problem because it had to do with the build. That's for a comment. That's a comment.
Hi, Doug.
Stand up.
Just one question is, do we actually track how many Ubuntu developers have become uploaders in packages in Debian? Because I know that there's several packages in Ubuntu that I sort of have adopted in a way in Debian and become part of that maintainer. I was curious if there's a relatively active flow of contributors in Ubuntu becoming DMs or at least being put in the uploaders flag of maintainers packages on collaboratively maintained packages.
You want to take that? So I think we have observed that there is actually a flux of people from Ubuntu becoming DMODD in various ways. There is a very interesting master thesis work by Gauden Styling, probably around here, where we monitor the change in the number of Debian users after the first release of Ubuntu and the change in, the additional developer workflow in Debian, showing that it's kind of compensating by people coming from Ubuntu. Then we have list of individuals which came from Ubuntu and joined Debian. Lucas had the list in his work at FOSDEM, I believe. So we are doing that in an empirical way. If you want to enable us to do that more precisely, I think you should just settle in something specifically, like saying that if you apply for NM coming from Ubuntu, just use your @ubuntu.com address, and then that way we can have some more precise statistics. And the other way around, of course. So
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Good
So
point.
actually, that's great. I am in the Ubuntu bug control group on Launchpad, and if you're a Debian developer that's working on a package and then you find a bug in Launchpad, you go in there and you don't have any admin rights. If you're the maintainer of that package in Debian, just get a hold of me and I'll give you the proper permissions to be able to. Won't fix the bug if you like. Lucas. Oh, I'm sorry. Ashish.
Can you just make that automatic, please?
Every time we try something automatic in Launchpad, it's not a good idea. Now, to be honest, For me, my selfish reason is because that way I have, I can talk to that person and I kind of know, hey, what package are you working on? So, but generally speaking, when it comes to things like that, we want humans to make the determination.
Yeah, so more generally, I think. Well,
Stand up.
The camera is just there, so it's fine. But more generally, I think that what would be great from Debian developers would be more feedback on how to improve procedures for them to contribute to Ubuntu. Like, I'm not talking about everybody becoming a Ubuntu developer, but for example, many people are interested in pushing specific versions of their packages to Ubuntu, and currently there's no standardized procedure for that. You could install Ubuntu DevTool and use request sync for that. It's not documented properly, and having people say, I like to do that, I like an easy way to do that, would be really helpful to know what are the things that cause this problem to Debian developer.
Yeah. Another thing, also in the same, I feel it would be nice if we could have, as a Debian developer, a kind of fast track, because Ubuntu developers have permissions. For example, I'm also involved in an Upstream project, and I found a kind of going to have to do the synchronization or to ask the synchronization all kind of my software when I'm uploading to Debian. So it would be great if we could have a kind of fast track as a Debian developer.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's pretty recent. You have to go to the procedure to get the permission.
So I just rapidly switching hats to the board that approves Ubuntu development. You do have to go through the approval thing, but for Debian developers, we make it much more lightweight on the basis that Debian already thinks you're beautiful. So yes, you do have to go through that procedure, but it is a fast track in the sense that you don't have to put nearly so much work into it on the Ubuntu.
So I'm about out of time. I just want to leave you with one thought. I came into this talk trying to get this discussion that we've been having going, and I said I'm not a technical person, but I think I'm smart enough to know who's what and link people together. So if you're a DD and you've ever find yourself that you need to talk to someone or you need to find someone in the project, feel free to spam me as much as you want. My job is to ensure that linkages happen between people. Even if I don't understand the technical aspects, I can get you talking to the right people.
People might be interested. Today or yesterday, I think, LWN had an article by Rafael Herzog about comparing the membership of Debian and Ubuntu, and it's an interesting read. People here might be interested.
And if you're interested in talking more about the derivatives discussion, Matt, you're running about when? It's not on the schedule, but we'll do our best to get it on. So, okay, thank you very much for attending.